Welcome to the Daily Thunder podcast. I am your host, Brandon Rabar, beat writer for dailythunder.com. Every week, we will have guests ranging from national sports writers and local reporters to OKC celebrities and Thunder staff and players. Our featured guest this week is David Brandon, a contributing writer for dailythunder.com and a salary cap guru. Even if he won't say so himself, I'll say it for him. This week, I just got out of the Russ returns to OKC game, so I am at Chesapeake Arena right now. I just want to do a rapid reactions, just my thoughts, my feelings overall on Russ returning. First of all, first class setup from the Thunder media people, media staff, whatever you call them, that made the tribute video. It was perfect because obviously it had a bunch of his highlight plays, his dunks, and him in a final shirt and all those things. But what I loved was the personal touch it had. It had the things that make Russ Russ. It had him singing in his car. You know, if you follow him on social media, you know he always is singing along to some like old Motown songs in his car. It had clips of that. It had clips of him in press room interviews getting ticked off. It had him with his kids. It was just the whole Russ experience, I think, in a little 2-minute tribute video, and it was really well done. And probably my favorite part of the night, honestly, was Russ coming out after he was introduced and the Thunder PA person doing the classic starting at guard, number 0 from UCLA, and the crowd went nuts, just absolutely nuts. And he went to the corner, like his trademarked run to the corner, hype up the crowd with a scream. He did that, and it was the loudest the crowd has ever got. It was amazing. Then a little bit later, he went to the other corner on the other side of the arena. The crowd went nuts. Probably my only small little complaint would be that I wish the PA guy, and it was probably an awkward deal, he didn't know exactly how long to let it go, but the Thunder fans were down for clapping as long as they would have been allowed to. They were cheering. The ovation was loud, strong, crazy. Russ lifted up his hand, and it went for like 25 seconds, which is nice. And then the PA guy, if it was at a 10 for 25 seconds, it maybe went to a 9. And the PA guy, I think, kind of took a chance, like, okay, maybe this is where I should, introduce the next guy. And it kind of ended. I wish that they would have just let that ride out. And if it took a minute, hey, it takes a minute, because that's memorable and epic. If it took 2 minutes, even better. However long it would have taken. I wish it would have just kind of naturally, organically fallen off. But that's my initial reaction from the intro. The game itself, the Thunder it was their best showing of the season. And just more and more, this Thunder team looks like a team that none of the top playoff teams is going to want to meet in the postseason. I think it looks like the 7th seed is pretty much a lock at this point. Yeah, they could move up to the 6th seed. It'll be tough to pass the Mavs or Jazz. They could fall down to 8. Obviously, if there's a fire sale and we start trading players, they could fall out of the playoffs, but I don't think that's going to happen necessarily at this point. I may contradict myself with the mailbag that you're going to listen to later on, because I recorded that yesterday, so my feelings have changed maybe slightly. But just a complete domination offensively, defensively. Offensively, scored 37 points in the first quarter, the most that any NBA team has scored this season in a quarter. And then on the other side, held Houston to 92 points, their lowest total of the season. So both offensively and defensively, the Thunder just showed out tonight in a big, big way. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be the 7th seed, and we're just going to kind of wait and see what's going to happen with the 2 seed. Who's that going to be? Could it be the Rockets? And if it is this game, the Rockets were fully healthy. Could this game be a preview of the postseason and what could happen? I don't know, because the energy in the crowd was so electric tonight because of Russ returning that I think that the Thunder players fed off of that, obviously. So in a way, Russ helped the Thunder win again tonight, honestly. Russ had a really good night. He was the only Rocket that performed well tonight. He scored over 30 points on good efficiency. I think he was 13 of 25 for like 32 points. Didn't get the triple-double, but his team didn't really help him out by not hitting shots. James Harden really with 17 points on, I believe, 5 of 12 shooting. Terrence Ferguson did a fantastic job on him. He had shades of Andre Robertson covering Harden tonight. Really, Rose is kind of the only guy in the NBA that really has done a job of just kind of shutting Harden down, and Ferguson kind of looked like that tonight. Schroeder helped out. Chris Paul helped out. They threw a bunch of guys at him when Ferguson got in foul trouble. But just a complete domination by the Thunder tonight. Now, post-game highlights for me, Russ doing the handshake with Steven Adams, Russ going over and hugging and giving love to Clay Bennett and all, the guys that he was close to. There's so many new players on this OKC team that weren't here when Russ played, but all the guys that played here, all the coaches and training staff and Thunder media staff, just all the love that you could see between those guys. And the crowd, of course, gave him another ovation as he was going off the court. And you could see his appreciation, especially in the post-game interview. Just a lot of love for the Thunder fans, the city, the team, and the organization. It was a really, really special night for OKC to welcome Russ back. It was a special night for Russ, but then also to see the potential of how good, again, this team can be and that it's not a fluke. And then the last thing I want to talk about, the halftime entertainment was pretty fun too, because we got to see a Twitter fight between Kevin Durant and Kendrick Perkins. And if you haven't seen it, you got to go check it out. I mean, Perk was basically saying that Russ was the best player in Thunder history and that he's basically Mr. Thunder. And somebody had said, yeah, but, what did he win without KD? And so Perk was like, hey, the 1 year that Russ was out, KD lost. I was on that team, and KD couldn't do jack without Russ, and he lost as well. And KD, of course, because KD's always hanging out on Twitter. He's ready, with one of his 20 accounts. He actually used his real account, not one of his burners. And it was honestly, I got to say, for KD, I'll give him his props. He had a pretty good remark for KD. He kind of went there. He went farther than I would have expected. And he said, yeah, well, did it help that our starting center, Perk, averaged 2 and 3 that series? And then Perk hit him back with basically saying that he made the weakest move in NBA history by being up 3-1 to a team that was 73-9 and going to get easy rings. I mean, it was like the gloves were off. It was awesome. It was hilarious. And I think every Thunder fan was cheering Perk on. It was great. But I will say this. It did slightly make me a little sad because you think back to those teams and those were good. Those guys were close. Russ, KD, Perk, Harden, those guys were tight. And, you look back on those teams with fond memories, and it's a little sad to see, even though Perk is definitely championing the thoughts that we all have about KD and how he messed OKC over. It was a little sad to see these guys that were like brothers they were throwing body blows at each other, just completely wrecking the other guys. But I will say, I think that Perk ended up winning the night. KD kind of backed down and he gave some cheesy gif of, I don't know, a sloth yawning. I was like, that's it. That's the end of the fight. This was going great. It was this big prize fight between two heavyweights, and then a heavyweight just takes a dive at the end. But that was fun too. It was a great night. I also got to mention the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial jerseys. I thought they looked sharp. They looked great aesthetically, but also just everything that went into the meaning behind them and everything that they mean to Oklahoma City. I think it was a great tribute there as well. So just overall, a great night in Oklahoma City to be a Thunder fan. And now, because it was such a special, memorable night, I thought it would be fun to talk to Thunder fans at the game and ask them their favorite thing about Russell Westbrook. And here are some Thunder fans with their favorite memories or thoughts on Russell Westbrook.
My name is Jacob Hunt. I live in OKC, and my favorite thing about Russ has got to be the intensity he plays with every night. I love him, man.
My name is Jordan May Stewart. I live in Oklahoma City, and my favorite thing is
his fire and desire to win.
Well, I mean, my favorite thing about Russell is his effort all the time, right? He was the only player that was going 110% the whole time.
My name's Case Cochran. I'm from Cashin, Oklahoma, and I love his positivity and just overall excitement that he brings to the game.
My name EJ McNeely from Oklahoma City. I know Russ actually personally.
Oh.
What I like about him is the dog in him. Like, he fights, you know what I mean? He don't give up. He just play 100% every night, right? He just a dog.
Jeffrey Johnson from Temple, Texas. My favorite Russell Westbrook memory. His genuine character, probably. How he still honors OKC even returning back. So I appreciate it.
Probably in 2017, like the MVP year where he hit that game-winning 3 versus Nuggets. That was really cool.
You know, the one that I think about is when he had the dent in his face and came back and played like 2 or 3 days later. Like he had this toughness. And I know a lot of players in the NBA are tough, but I mean, you could literally see like the dude had a dent in his face and then came back and played just a couple days later.
Steve O'Brien, Oklahoma City. Love his energy, his ferociousness, just all the energy that he brought to the team while he was here in Oklahoma City.
I like his heart. And I like his attitude.
My name's Stefan from Shawnee. I wish we still had him in Oklahoma City. He's a go-getter. Nobody else like him.
Dakota Sainer, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Favorite thing, just his intensity and work ethic.
Ed, Tulsa, and I liked how he's always fought so hard and was so energetic and tried so hard. Perfect. He shot a ton of dumb shots, but he was entertaining while he did it, if nothing else.
My name's Hayden Marchant. I'm from Oklahoma City. My favorite things about Westbrook is probably his loyalty and his love for Oklahoma.
Carter Anthony Mayers. And my favorite thing about Russell Westbrook is about how he plays basketball, how he's very good at it, and he uses his skills against his other team. He figures out their ups and downs.
Dorothea Parrish, Moore, Oklahoma. I like Russ. He got us started. We wouldn't be where we are without him. So, hey, if he wanted to go further, that's fine. We're doing great. Love Russ.
Wes from Dell City, and Russ busts his ass every single play of the game.
And you said he's your hero. Why is he your hero?
He's my hero because he makes every dollar that he makes, he earns it. Not like all the other athletes.
My name's Katie. I'm from Edmond, Oklahoma, and my favorite thing about Russ is he never leaves anything out on the court. I mean, he leaves everything out there. It's his passion. He's just the best.
My name's Bo from Edmond, Oklahoma, and I like Russ because he doesn't care what anybody else thinks about him, and he's out there to do himself and not worried about anybody else.
Clint Parker from Shawnee, Oklahoma, and probably favorite thing is that he stood by Oklahoma City, stayed here when he could have left the first time.
I'm joined now by David Brandon. Mr. Brandon and I go a long ways back to the Mr. Presley's Neighborhood days. David, I know you're writing for Daily Thunder now, so you're a colleague of mine. How are you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Doing really, really good.
Russ is returning home tonight. Just first off, what's your feelings as a longtime Thunder fan and Russ fan, but now he's on the Rockets, and now we're kind of falling for this team. What's your feelings with Russ coming home?
Kind of mixed. I mean, I still love Russ, but like I am honestly like genuinely enjoying like the different style of this team, because I like if I were to be a fan of a team that was not like based on where I'm from, it would have been like the grit grind Grizzlies, like that sort of deliberate tough defense, like slow pace sort of stuff, right. Which is like very not the way that the Thunder play with Russ. I mean, Don't get me wrong, I loved it. I love, when Russ just goes down the court and just yams it on three guys, or like seeing him just like drive through stuff like a freight train, and I can respect it. But I am really enjoying like this sort of more deliberate pace of things with the Thunder now. But I mean, yeah, it's going to be really interesting, like as a fan, and as an Oklahoma City native, what Russ did for the team. I mean, with those guys that, the Russ, Katie, Serge, James Harden, like those guys putting the team on the map, putting the city on the map, and then like Russ being the one who kind of stuck it out and stayed around for the long term. I mean, like that means a ton. As an Oklahoma City resident, like that means a lot to me.
Right.
And what he did for the city.
Yeah, I think that what Russ did kind of transcended basketball. Whether you can look at analytics and you can look at advanced stats and all those things, his efficiency, and you can nitpick those things. But bottom line, he was a superstar who stayed when no other superstars would stay, and in a way, it kind of saved the franchise. Really, I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah.
not to sound dramatic, but there was a lot of worry about what was going to happen with this team moving forward in the organization. I mean, when Katie left, it could have just been like this, travesty. And Russ sticking around, Sam Presti said it best. He said that Russell Westbrook is the most important player in Thunder history, and he always will be. And he is. Are there better players? Yeah, Katie was a better player. James Harden, you can argue, whatever. I'm not going to have those arguments right now, but the most important player in Thunder history is Russ, and he did things that other superstars wouldn't. Now, do you have any favorite Thunder memories with Russ, like whether it be on or off the court, some of his epic interviews, any plays or any games or any moments that stick out to you the most?
Oh, game 5 of the Heat series. He basically said, like, this team may lose, but like it's not losing because I didn't do enough. Like the like cartoon or anime thing where like the guy like throws off the weights and it's like, oh no, like he's here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he's taking the limiter off. And it was just like Russ just went, and it was like, oh, this guy can be something. Like it was almost, he was like this really, really raw sort of loose cannon
right
guard, and then all of a sudden you saw him like on the biggest stage of his life just go nuts.
Yeah.
In a do or die elimination game, and it was like, okay, all right, this guy's got something.
Yep. He was, not to say whatever about KD, but KD in some of those moments when games were kind of out of hand or things were looking like they were down, he could tend to be passive. He could tend to look a little frustrated and just kind of get out of a game. That was not Russ, and I specifically remember that about that game 5 against the Heat. To Russ, that was a challenge. That was go time, and that was a big difference I saw between those two guys. They each had their pros and cons and things like that on the court, but I do think that is one difference. For me, I mean, this is such a generic answer, but I'll never forget the flip shot against the Lakers in the playoffs. It was such an epic moment. I mean, I was in the crowd, and I mean, the place lost their absolute minds. But to me, I think kind of the defining moment of Russ, besides all the Barry Trammell interviews and the Darnell Mayberry reactions and things like that, I think my favorite moment would be just him re-signing in that summer of 2016. That kind of put all the Thunder fans at ease. Like, okay, it's going to be all right. I mean, we've still got Russ. We've got a superstar. We'll still be relevant. We've got a future. So to me, that'll probably always go down as my favorite all-time Russ moment. Also, honorable mention that Nuggets, where he broke the triple-double record and then won the game from 40 feet, at the buzzer. I'll never forget that either. But it's funny when you talk about Russ because there's so many. You could have like a top 5 favorite on-court moments. You can have a top 5 favorite interview moments. You could have a top 5 favorite community outreach moments. I mean, he did so much of that. Family moments. He was so involved with, Nina and Ray and his parents and his kids. But you could have top 5 fashion choices. I mean, there's so many different sides of Russ that it's kind of hard to come up with one moment.
When you talk about the Thunder, like there is sort of this Russ-shaped stamp on the organization, like particularly since 2016, but even since probably the Harden trade. Like the organization has kind of taken on a lot of his personality, and I think he had at least a decent amount of influence over the way that things went, and that stays. You look at the guys that went on elsewhere and credited him with like teaching them some of the professionalism and the day in, day out work ethic that it takes to get to that level. Not just even on the court, but like off the court and organizationally, he left a mark that's probably going to resonate down the line. You look at great franchises and the great players for those franchises, their influence lingers on after they're gone, whether they're playing for the team or not. And I'm sure that'll be the case with Russ.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that some people will always find negatives. And I'm sure that there were some marks that he left on the organization that, weren't exactly positive as far as, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say this in a negative tone, but some people claim that he had so much control over the organization that, the lighting in certain rooms had to be a certain whatever. And, you hear these crazy stories. And I don't know how much of that is true or not true. But I do think when it comes down to professionalism and work ethic and effort and laying it all out on the line, I think that he helped to build that culture of winning and success in the Thunder organization. And like you said, I think that continues on with the players that were around him, his teammates, but also with the coaching staff and the organization itself. It's just one of those instilled things that the Thunder stand for. And I think that Russ was a big part of that. And you're seeing the fruits of those labor now. I mean, obviously you got to credit Donovan and Presti and Chris Paul as the new vet and the young guys like Shea and things like that, Steven Adams. But I do think that teams and organizations build a culture and they follow suit. And I think that, Russ left his imprints and we're still seeing that. So there you go. David, thank you so much for joining on the show.
Not a problem. Thank you, Brandon.
It's now time to open up the Daily Thunder mailbag. I'm joined by our producer, Rachel Jameson. Hey.
Hi, Brandon.
So we asked you guys through Twitter to send us questions about the Thunder, about whatever you want to ask, and we got a lot of questions.
The Twitter mailbag is very full this week.
I'm excited. Let's find out what people want to know about the Thunder.
Well, no surprise. Everyone wants to know about the trade deadline, Brandon. Let's start with Chris OKC, who asked if you think the Thunder are going to be buyers or sellers in the deadline.
That is the $1 million question. And I got to be honest, I don't know if anybody besides Sam Presti knows. I don't know if Sam Presti's wife even knows the answer to this question.
Do you think that Sam Presti knows the answer to this question right now?
I don't know. I think he does at this point. I think he probably decided within the last few weeks. He's always got a plan, and then he's got another plan for that plan. So I do think he knows. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, the idea was to be sellers, get as many assets as possible for the vets, especially Gallinari. If you can, Chris Paul, possibly Steven Adams, and Dennis Schroeder. The problem is the Thunder are playing so well right now.
They are.
They're locked into that 7 seed. They're so far ahead of the 8, 9, and 10 seeds. I think they're going to be buyers. Now, I honestly think that they might be neutral. I think that they want to get better without giving up any real assets. Are they going to give up a Gallinari, a Steven Adams, a Schroeder, a Chris Paul? I think if they get an offer that blows them away, Sam Presti would have to do it. If he even gets an offer that's really good, not necessarily the best offer, a Godfather offer, you take it. I think at the end of the day, though, he wants to see this team in the playoffs, compete with what they have, and try to make an improvement or two. There's some definite weak areas they can improve at, but without having to give up any long-term assets. I think maybe the one thing that will be in play would be the Denver first-round pick. They're going to have 2 first-round picks next year, ours and the Nuggets. The Nuggets is going to be probably somewhere between 23 and 28. So you can give that up. If you can give that up and find a nice player, you do it. That can help you this year.
Okay, well, Thunder Chats is convinced that they're sneaky buyers, so he'd like to know what's a move that you would like to see if that is, in fact, true.
So the one area of improvement they could definitely make that's obvious to me is the starting small forward position. No shade meant to be thrown at Terrence Ferguson, but Chris Paul, Shea, Gallo, and Adams, that is a rock solid 4 out of 5. The one weak area would be Ferguson. You see the ups and the downs. His defense has been good. He has nights where he can hit, but he's too unreliable. And, in crunch time, he gets replaced by Dennis Schroeder. If you could get a Robert Covington, now that'd be a great get. I'm just using his as an example. You want somebody that can play good defense and knock down threes. Robert Covington is gettable. I don't know if he's gettable for what the Thunder would be willing to offer. I don't think you can get him with Terrence Ferguson and the Nuggets' first-round pick, but if you can, he's on a nice contract for the next couple of years. You get a guy like Covington. That starting five can go head-to-head with anybody. If you can't get Covington, if you don't want to spend that much to get somebody like Covington, maybe even a Tony Snell, he could get him easy without giving up really anything of significance, and he would help out a lot. So a guy like that, a 3-and-D small forward. And hey, what's up, Thunder Chats?
So B Funko and Brent Brown are a little concerned about the future of Gallinari.
Yeah.
B Funko says, do you guys think there's a way we can keep Gallinari? Because, man, triple fire emojis right there.
Yeah.
And Brent Brown said, do we absolutely have to trade Gallinari, or is there any way to keep him? Can we sign him to like a 3-year deal?
Yeah, Gallinari is definitely the one guy because he's expiring. Rule number one of Sam Presti and really of any good GM in the NBA is you don't want to lose an asset for nothing. Right now, Gallo's an asset. Every single playoff team would love to have him because he's going to make every single team better. And he's on an affordable deal. And you could get back easily a first-round draft pick. Maybe a first-round draft pick and a young player. Or just a young player who's going to be, part of the long-term plans. It'd be very hard to say no to that because ultimately, as fun as this team is and as much noise as we'd like to see them make in the playoffs, ultimately we need to see this team long term. What's going forward, Shea and who else. All that to say, at this point, you can keep Gallo, maybe sign him to an extension, and then you keep him as an asset. You're not losing him for anything. Now, if you want to be competitive for the next few years, you've got him. And if you want to trade him down the road, you can trade him and get something back later. The only thing is, you either trade him now or you sign him to that extension because you do not want to see him walk for nothing in free agency and lose out. If I had to say right now, I think that Presti will get a deal too good to pass up. And I think he'll have to pull the trigger, and he'll still be competitive. He'll try to get something back that'll still help, but will it be Gallo? No. But long term, it'll help the Thunder.
I tend to agree with you on that. Okay, so the Shadow has
The Shadow?
The Shadow.
Like Alec Baldwin? That's a deep cut. There's going to be like 3 people who get that joke.
Really? You think only 3 people know the Shadow?
You know the Shadow?
I do.
Well, that's already... I only need 2 more and I'll be happy.
The Shadow wants to know...
It's funny every time you say it. You might as well be saying like Rocket Man to me.
You're making this podcast very difficult. Should I go with the at Guinea Apology 7?
No, go with the Shadow.
How much do you think popularity has an impact versus skill? A lot of people make trades and decisions based on wins and losses, but I know a ton of people that like the players. They would rather lose than trade Steven Adams, which is a little bit triggering to me personally.
Yeah, are you the Shadow, Rachel?
Let's not talk about it. Does this factor at all into the decisions that get made, do you think?
Russell Westbrook was traded. Paul George was traded. James Harden was traded. Jeff Green was traded. A lot of fan favorites have been traded over the years. Now, obviously, there were, deeper things going on with each one of those things, but I don't think that Sam Presti is afraid to make a trade based on emotions and feelings. Now, the one caveat I will say to that is Steven Adams is a special case. And I would lump Russ in with that and Nick Collison in with that, where he's a Thunder guy through and through. He's part of the culture, and there is a special attachment between fans and player, city and player. And I do think that Sam Presti would like to see Steven Adams stay here. But again, if he gets a deal that's going to make the Thunder better, either now or more importantly in the future, I do think he would make that deal as hard as it would be. Enes Kanter, Serge Ibaka. The list goes on. There's so many guys that Thunder fans love that when push came to shove, Presti's going to do what's better for the team. Did you hate that answer?
It hurts my heart.
I think that he's going to try to keep him, though. I think he would like to keep him. His deal actually works out perfectly. He's only got 1 more year left. It wouldn't hurt that much to keep him. and then get him on a friendlier contract.
I feel like you're saying all this to make me feel better.
I am.
Our old pal Chincho wants to know if you would keep Steven Adams in a tanking Thunder, and if so, how much time do you think it would cost us to come back to contention?
Yeah, I would keep Steven Adams on a tanking Thunder. He helps your team win, which you don't want if you're tanking. But if you're ripping away Chris Paul and Gallo and Schroeder, and your two really good players that are left will be SGA and Adams, as good as those two are, they're not going to win enough to where it's going to hurt you as far as draft picks too much. You know, you can still get a top pick if those two guys are left. And those would be two great guys to build around. Adams can be the third or fourth best player on a contender. He's not going to be the second best player, but he's great for the culture and he's great for the city. He still will put fans in seats because they love him. Yeah, I would keep him. As somebody who loves Steven Adams and still values his play on the court, yes, I would.
I like that answer, but even thinking about this question is breaking my heart just a little bit, Brandon. So let's talk about how well some other players are doing. Ryan Woods wants to know if Dort has played his way out of the G League.
Apparently not. Since you sent in this question, he's back in the G League, so that's an easy one. Now, do I think he should have played himself out of the G League? If Diallo wasn't back, I would say yes, because I want to see Dort play over Nate or Burton and all those guys. Do I play him over Diallo? No, not yet. But I'm a Dort fan, and honestly, I would find him minutes somehow at the cost of, I don't know whose, but he's NBA ready to me. He's already a positive defender, and I want to see these guys, these young guys, get more and more minutes. But it's hard to when you're in the 7th seed and now it's like a playoff team and expectations have changed and you want to win every night. It's hard to get a guy like Dort into the rotation if it's going to cost somebody like Paul or Schroeder even a few minutes. So I get it.
Josh Ferris wants to know if you think Ferguson has hit his ceiling in terms of NBA potential.
It's crazy to say because he's still so young. He's only 21 years old. But it feels like it, right? I don't know if Ferguson is ever going to be anything other than a pretty good defender and an up and down three-point shooter. You see every great once, like every 8th game, he'll take it to the rack, maybe do a Euro step, but he's not confident in handling. He's not that confident in going to the rim unless it's an open dunk. But all the tools are there. He works hard. He's athletic. He can shoot some, and he's young enough. So I hate to just write him off because he can improve, yes, but it feels like he's hit his ceiling.
Okay, so what about Coach Billy Donovan? Stash Adams wants to know how much or little credit do you think Billy should get for the Thunder's surprising start to the season?
He should get a lot of credit. You know, I've always felt like if you're going to blame a coach for losses, then he needs to get some credit for wins. And that's kind of been the story on Donovan. We've been blaming him for years. So now that they're exceeding expectations instead of underperforming, I think he needs some credit. And he was coach of the month in December. Well deserved.
He was.
You got a ragtag group, a mix of vets, a mix of rookies, young guys, G League players, different skill sets, and I mean it's a ragtag group that's overperforming. You got to give the coach some credit. So
I think this is what Presti saw in Donovan, but Donovan walked into a system that wasn't his. So
yeah, a system that wasn't his, and I love Russ, but Russ and Katie both, they're ISO players, and that's what they've always done and wanted to do, and that's kind of what was ingrained. And then Paul George came and Melo, and it was you're dealing with superstars, and it's hard to rein those guys in and say this is the system. And yeah, so now he's got more coachable, young, impressionable players that are buying in, and you see the results. But I love Russ, just to be clear.
All right, let's go to some fun questions, Brandon. Some behind-the-scenes questions. Deidre Anderson wants to know if you and Olivia get into some serious disagreements over the Thunder.
We've had this back and forth, obviously, on Daily Thunder and on Twitter about Darius Baisley versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the whole Fresh Prince thing. I hate to disappoint you. it's kind of for show. We actually get along really well, and we seem to agree a lot. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Nader, maybe. We may disagree some on Nader, because it seems like when we've been at games together, I'm like, oh, Nader shouldn't be taking that shot. Oh, Nader's just going to go straight to the rack. Oh, there's 6 guys on Nader. He's going to shoot it anyways. We're both the problem is we're both so positive. We're kind of both sunshine pumpers. So we don't get into a lot of
Do you just try to like out positive each other? Like that's how you argue?
Well, that's why I brought up
out positive each other.
That's why I brought up Nader, because he's probably the one guy, God bless him, because he's actually overperformed as well, and I got to give him some credit. He's played well this season, but I guess past seasons and things like that have kind of developed a sort of Nader-tude. And that's probably the one thing I'm not a sunshine pumper at, but Olivia still is. So that's probably the one disagreement. So I guess she just ekes me out on the positivity.
That
She's
sounds
got me.
Adorable.
It's really cute.
And this last,
especially in a world, in the sports world, and even reporters and analysts and stuff like that, there's a lot of cynical and negative things out there. So it's a rare thing to have 2 radiant beams of light covering your team.
Yeah, we'll run this past John Hamm when he comes by. And last question, which I saved it for last because it's clear why you included this question in our mailbag, starts, "Hey Brandon, big fan."
Anything that starts out that way is going to make the mailbag. There was, we probably cut half the questions this week, not because they weren't good, just we had a lot, thankfully. But if you started that way, it's guaranteed. I don't care what your question is.
Well, Dakari Sanchez, big fan, big Brandon fan, wants to know, would you rather listen to your least favorite Michael Jackson song on a 24-hour loop for a week, or have the Cowboys bring back Jason Garrett, their coach?
So today it got announced that Mike McCarthy is the new coach. So thankfully I don't have to make this decision. But honestly, even my least favorite Michael Jackson song is still a song I really like. So it basically comes down to would I rather listen to Liberian Girl from the Bad album on a loop for 24 hours or have Jason Garrett coach? Easily Liberian Girl. Like not even a question. You can make this, it could be a week, it could be a month. I would still choose Liberian Girl over Jason Garrett, which that has to be the first time in the history of mankind that those words have been put together in a sentence, right? I'm choosing Liberian Girl over Jason Garrett.
Now that it's an option, I think everybody would take that option, wouldn't they?
Thank you to everybody who wrote into the DT mailbag. If you did write in with a question, you got entered into a drawing for free tickets for a future Thunder game. So keep that in mind and keep the questions coming all year long. Be sure to send your questions to dailythunder@gmail.com or hit me up at Brandon Rabar on Twitter.
Brandon, we're closing up the mailbag, but before we close out this segment, I wanted to let you know that we're getting some ratings here on our Apple podcast.
Oh.
Isn't that exciting?
Hey, nice. I hadn't even checked that.
So far, we have 6 ratings.
Okay.
5 of them are 5-star, and 1 of them is 1-star.
What? I told my mom not to rate the show. She was going to listen.
I'm afraid it might be Steven Adams after he heard my comments. You know who it wasn't? It wasn't Ish That, because he left us a nice review. He or she.
Oh, no. I want to hear this review. Then I legitimately haven't heard this.
This review says, I now have a favorite Thunder podcast.
Oh.
5 stars. Nice. Brandon's informed and infectious perspective on this team is always fun, and the production value and guest getting are top notch.
That is so nice.
Compliments all around to the whole DT podcast team. I appreciate that, Ish That.
No, that is really, really nice. Thank you so much.
And shout out to Cray for the guest getting.
Yes.
By the way.
Yeah. Man, that made me feel really nice. More people need to leave reviews. That really felt really, really special.
Did it make you forget all about that 1-star review?
It's in the back of my head still. It's kind of kicking around back there, like wondering.
Maybe
if
we got some more reviews, it'd make you feel better.
Wondering what I could have done wrong. 1 star. I can see 3 stars, maybe
like
even 2, maybe even 2. Like I was, but 1. Maybe they thought it was like on a golf scale, like the lower the better.
Like you're under par.
The lower score. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Or shows like a birdie to this guy. Is that the right phrase? Like when you're 1 under par, they're like a birdie?
I don't know.
I'm a basketball football guy. I'm not a golf guy. Thank you for listening and for supporting Daily Thunder. If you leave us a review in Apple Podcasts, we'll read it on the show. You can follow our guest David Brandon at Bird Rights NBA, and you can follow me at Brandon Rabar as I cover the Thunder beat in person. This podcast is produced by Rachel Jameson. You can follow her if you have absolutely nothing better to do at Rach Jameson. Send your questions and feedback to dailythunder@gmail.com and stay on dailythunder.com every day to catch the latest Thunder news, recaps, analysis, interviews, and all kinds of nonsense. We'll see you next week.